All right. Hi, guys. Hope everyone is doing fine. Today, we're going to go through our decomposition assignment. And let's start. Now, by the end of these 2 weeks on decomposition, you would have analyzed poetry for lit devices and look for its implied meaning. You'll also have a chance to present your responses in an essay using the Peel framework. Now, you have done the pre-activity for the composition. You have read the articles. I hope you have read the articles about poverty and beggars in Scandinavia. Now I'll just go through some poverty facts relating to Singapore. All right. So, 10 facts about poverty in Singapore. Poverty in Singapore suffers from a lack of visibility. What does it mean? It means that poverty in Singapore is not easily seen, it's well hidden from society and this is largely due to Singapore's very large inequality gap, meaning we have a lot of millionaires, but also a lot of middle class and a lot of people who are living in destitute conditions as well. And also, this reflects our 10 to 14% of Singaporeans who face severe poverty. Now, poverty is an increasing problem in Singapore. It's getting worse and worse each year, especially now with situations like the COVID-19, this pandemic, this worldwide pandemic, where we see a lot of businesses folding, closing down, um, and we notice that the pandemic has hit the poorest the most, and poverty is an issue for the elderly and also for the young. All right, so most impoverished people are over 60 years of age, but also we have young people facing poverty because of the low paying entry level jobs that they are applying for. Now I'll just stop here. I'll stop elaborating on poverty in Singapore, but I'm sure you get the gist that when you read the poem like Decomposition, I hope these images come to mind. Yes, we read articles about other countries, but also let's look back to our own community as well. Okay, who are our destitute people, and also how can we help? Now let's just dive in reading the poem by Zulkifar Ghosh, um, Decomposition. I have a picture I took in Bombay of a beggar asleep on the pavement, grey haired, wearing shorts and a dirty shirt, his shadow thrown aside like a blanket. His arms and legs could be cracks in the stone, routes for ants' journeys, the flies' descents. Brainwashed by the sun into exhaustion, he lies veined into stone, a fossil man. Behind him there is a crowd passingly bemused by a pavement trickster, and quite indifferent to this very common sight of an old man asleep on the pavement. I thought it then a good composition, and glibly called it The Man in the Street, remarking how typical it was of India that the man in the street lived there. His head in the posture of one weeping into a pillow chides me now for my presumption at attempting to compose art of his hunger and solitude. All right, let's delve into the annotation. You may pause the video here to copy the annotation, Decomposition by Zulfikar Ghosh. Now, I shall annotate stanza by stanza. I will just do a short commentary as you copy down. Make sure you copy down. You can use different colored pens or highlighters if you wish. Now, let's look at the first stanza. I have a picture I took in Bombay Now, the first line already tells me that this is like a story. This is like a narrative, right? It's a personal experience by the persona. And where was the persona? He was in Bombay, in India. Of a beggar asleep on the pavement, grey haired, wearing shorts and a dirty shirt, his shadow thrown aside like a blanket. Now, how do we know that the theme of poverty is already dealt in the first stanza? Because of the word beggar and how he describes the beggar. He's wearing a dirty shirt, his shadow thrown aside like a blanket. So, the description of the beggar suggests poverty. Now, let's look at the certain words, okay? Let's focus on the word choice here. Let's look at the word shadow and thrown aside. What is the effect of these words, right? Shadow implies that he's not really a person, and thrown aside means not really cared by society, right? Um, And this again reflects on the problem of poverty in India at that point of time. Let's go to the second stanza. His arms and legs could be cracks in the stone. Now this is a metaphor and it suggests the beggar is like part of the pavement. The fact that his arms and legs are like thin lines on the pavement. And again, this shows on the whole idea how insignificant the beggar is. And this is further suggested by these lines in the second stanza. His roots for the ant's journeys, flies descents. The fact that little insects um, sort of live like a parasite on him, right, suggests his insignificance as well. The ants and flies walk on him. Brainwashed by the sun into exhaustion, he lies veined into stone, a fossil man. Now, let's zone in on this word fossil. Okay, the word choice here, fossil, what does it mean? Fossil means something old, isn't it? And also, fossil means something that is dead, that the beggar is a mere impression on the stone. Again, this heightens the impression that the the beggar is not really human or is not treated as a human being but more like part of the pavement. Hence, that's why he is invincible. Now, this idea of invisibility of the beggar is heightened in stanza 3, where we see that behind him there is a crowd passingly bemused by a pavement trickster, and quite indifferently to this very common sight of an old man asleep on the pavement. So over here we see, okay, again we zone in the word passingly bemused. Okay, this is how you analyze words in a poem. You zero into the words, the word choice of the poet. Passingly bemused means, these passers-by are just looking at what entertains them, and they have a pavement trickster, and they're quite indifferent. Indifferent means not paying attention to the old man sleeping on the pavement. Again, the fact that the poet says this is a common sight, which means poverty is quite rampant in India. Okay, fourth stanza. I thought it then a good composition. Now let's stop here and let's go back to the title. All right, because we didn't analyze it. I didn't want to analyze it then until we've gone through this fourth stanza. Let's go to decomposition here. Decomposition has two meanings, right? The first meaning would be something that breaks down, right? Decomposition, something that breaks down, something that dies. And then the second meaning of decomposition is related to photography. Whenever you want to take a nice photo, people say, okay, make sure the composition is good. So I'm not sure whether you know this, this idea of the rule of thirds. Okay, just Google it. Okay, the rule of thirds. Basically, if you want to take a picture, make sure your subject is at the side, not at the center. All right. So the word composition also relates to photography, and then we know that the persona is a photographer. So the fact that there's a word play going on here, decomposition means dying, decomposing, and then the other meaning is composition, meaning how a photograph is being taken. Now let's go back to the fourth stanza. All right. I thought it then a good composition. So this word composition here, the poet is talking about how he wants to take a picture, the picture. All right. And glibly called it the man on the street, remarking how typical it was of India that the man in the street lived there. Now, this fourth paragraph, okay, raises a lot of questions. Now, this word glibly, it connotes, it suggests an uncaring attitude by the persona, isn't it? That it feels that he's just there to take photographs of people, and also here we see that the persona is just taking photos of the man. To him, he's just a man on the street. He is like a tourist taking a photograph, all right? But the beggar is lying in the street. So we sometimes we take pictures of people without knowing their story, or even without asking their permission, right? That's what's happening here. And let's focus on the word typical here. Let's zone in the word typical. The word typical suggests a very careless, insensitive tone by the persona. Let's look at the last stanza. His head in the posture of one weeping into a pillow. Now, this image, okay, of the beggar, it makes the old man seem childlike, isn't it? Right? He is in like a fetal position. It seems that he's childlike, almost innocent. This innocent air about the beggar chides me now. Chides, the meaning of chide is scold. Chides me now for my presumption at attempting to compose art out of his hunger and solitude. Now the last stanza tells us that the persona actually feels kind of bad at what he has done, right? He realizes that this man, he's just an innocent bystander to what is happening around him, and the fact that the persona has shown insensitivity to the man's actual plight, um, that most people are just tourists. They're only concerned about the photograph, right? and don't we see this in Singapore? Sometimes we see something wrong around us, but we just, you know instead of calling for help or helping, or having the will to act, we actually snap a photo, put it on Storm or put it on Facebook and shame people, right? But do we actually understand, or empathize with the people whom we take the picture for? All right. Okay, so this part here, you can stop the video and you can copy the answers. All right, now look at this. Okay, um the items over here, okay, the yellow box, okay, all these, all right, are moods, okay, type of moods that we can use, okay, when it comes to this poem over here. All right, so what's the subject? Okay, let's do an S square MP analysis, okay, for the composition. So what's the subject of the poem? It is the beggar, or the photo that the persona took, okay, because he's talking about the whole decomposition. Subject matter: poverty, art, discrimination. Mood is depressing, heavy, sympathetic. Towards the end, okay, the persona was sympathetic of the beggar. He realizes he's actually a bit ashamed, right? Um, of what he has done. And the purpose, intention of the poem is to raise awareness about poverty, to expose how indifferent and selfish people, and how selfish people really are. All right. Okay. So this is how we analyze the first two stanzas of the poem. All right, pick out the imagery used and analyze what the poet is trying to say with the use of such language. Now, simile over here, right? Okay, um, we have picked out three pieces of figurative language with simile, metaphor, and personification. Now, this is simile I picked out. His shadow thrown aside like a blanket. Over here, shadow suggests that the beggar is unnoticeable, living like a blanket. It reveals the poor state that he is living, and also might suggest that the beggar is not even regarded as a person because he's thrown aside. Okay, the metaphor, lines veined into stone or fossil man. This metaphor suggests that the beggar is part of the pavement. He's a fossil. It suggests lifelessness, highlighting his insignificance or a non-human state. Personification. The picture chides me now. The picture is scolding the persona. All right, remember the word chides is actually scolding. The photograph the persona took seems to be scolding or reprimanding the persona, highlighting his shame at being presumptuous or disrespectful for being blasé about poverty and poor people. All right, so you can actually use this in your peel paragraph. All right. This is just the first two stanzas. The next two stanzas, okay, we want you to analyze yourself. All right. So remember, okay, so I'll just go back um to the last three stanzas here. Now, if you wanted to help you write, okay, the info for the last three stanzas, okay, if you focus on stanza 3, okay, again, you can focus on the words passingly bemused, indifferent, old man sleep on the pavement. Basically, it creates a scene, um or this stanza emphasizes how the beggar is constantly ignored, and the idea of insignificance is repeated in stanza 3. In stanza 4, again, you can talk about how the beggar is treated like an art piece by the persona, the photographer, again, emphasizing on how insignificant the beggar is. And the fifth stanza, you can focus on the image of the beggar, how the image of the beggar here is very childlike and also portrays a sense of innocence. Okay, because he is alone in his suffering. Okay, so stanza 5, you can focus on the image of the beggar, um lying down on the ground. Okay, um and again, and all these stanzas create like a mood of sadness, of melancholy, okay, and of sympathy as well. All right, I will stop here. Okay, any issues that you have, okay, you can ask your lit teachers, Miss Clara and myself. Okay, as so this is your essay question. How does the writer vividly portray the condition of the street beggar? All right, so just go back to the analysis over here. Okay, you should be able to do the assignment. All right, all the best. Thank you.